coming up next, we have a small announcement. Professor Dr. Tamara Termshik is under the weather, so we have added some people. So here to moderate this, German YouTube star and freelance journalist and author of Cannabis Extraction, Michael Knotz.
Hi, Michael.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm waiting another half a minute till it's a little bit more quiet here. Welcome to our panel, Unveiling the Cannabis Plant's Potential. I'm happy to be here. Just it's the first event after Germany decriminalized cannabis, and that also influences my work, that influences everybody's work here. And give another big up for Germany's legalization, please, before we begin, please. Thank you very much. So I'm really proud to present you two experts today. Let me start with Dr. Markus Weid. Dr. Markus Weid, he has a very long history as a cannabis researcher. Markus Weid has a very long history and career in the medicinal plant research. He worked for numerous very famous projects, universities. He studied in Würzburg, and meanwhile he started to concentrate on developing cannabis extracts for his own company. And he's a manager and founder of Alpha Topics GmbH, which is a German company focusing on cannabis extractions. And Dr. Markus Weid will give us a very scientific insight in the cannabis extraction and in the pharmaceutical standards of cannabis extraction. Is that right, Markus? Okay. Oh, you don't have a microphone.
Oh, okay. So I have correct. I'm not in the extraction services. So Alpha Topics is providing training and consultancy for herbal medicinal products. And my background is university, but I also did a lot of support in approval of botanicals and herbal medicinal products in my career. I was involved in over 100 projects for registration of herbal medicinal products. Also, the first herbal medicinal product which was approved by the FDA, which was Verigen. I was involved, and yes, so this is my background, but I'm not in the extraction industry.
You know a lot about extraction. This is what I could hear from the talk, and we had before this panel, and I'm very keen to hear more details. But let me introduce Markus, Dr. Markus Roggen first. Hello, Markus.
Hello, the other one.
Exactly, another Markus. Markus is from Canada, from the country where cannabis is already legal for 6 years now. And he's the founder of Controlled Chemistry. He's dedicated to cannabinoid research and, of course, to production, aren't you?
Yes, I do all the weird and wonderful chemistry of cannabis.
And what is your company dedicated to? What's your role in the Canadian market at the moment?
So I'm in Canada because Canada, it's legal, and I have the regulatory framework to play around with all cannabis. I'm German originally, so we do, and chemistry is like general science, right? Cannabis will behave chemically the same way in any country, so we can do the research in Canada, but it's applicable to any place around the world. And so we act as a contract research organization for the cannabis industry and cannabis-curious companies to solve their various chemistry problems.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's very good to have your experience here because your market is already existing while our market is still developing.
Yes, I come from the future.
But we already have a medical market here in Germany. Most of you know we have that medical market, and meanwhile it's a very liberal market, I would call it. It's very close, I could nearly compare it to the US market, because it's not as complicated anymore to have a prescription, and we have over 200,000 patients now here, which is really a very, very huge increase. But our community, doctors, most companies, and also patients, they do so as if cannabis only exists of THC and CBD, which is not the case. Anybody of us who's involved in the topic knows that a human has an endocannabinoid system, and not only THC and CBD play a major role, but also all the other components cannabis contains, the cannabinoids and the terpenes, play a role when it comes to the medical use. But in Germany, does anybody know a company who labels terps or cannabinoids? I don't know. I don't know a company. And meanwhile, we have 420 strains in the pharmacy. We also have extracts in the pharmacy. And I do not quite understand why companies, patients, doctors, wholesalers, and the whole branch doesn't concentrate on the cannabinoid and the terps more here in Germany. Because I know in Canada and the US it's a very big thing. And so let me ask Dr. Markus Veit, why is that so?
That's a regulatory issue, because of course companies are free to label further cannabinoids and also to label certain terpenoids. But from a regulatory point of view, as you label it, it must be part of the specification, it must be tested. For this you need validated test methods. And from a formal point of view, any of these additionally labeled components are APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients. And therefore they need to be prescribed. So if you label one more terpenoid or one more cannabinoid, we do have single patient prescription here in Germany. MDs need to prescribe exactly this product labeled with more than CBD and THC. And this is also a matter of the pharmacopoeia monograph, because there's a misunderstanding that only flowers or extracts really fitting to this monograph could be marketed, but this is not true. It's a prescription, and doctors are free to prescribe anything, and the monographs provide a kind of a framework for minimum quality. So in minimum CBD and THC needs to be labeled, but it could be more. So this is possible, but difficult, because...
So if a doctor is trained, for example, and at the moment it's considered probably as extra work, because a doctor would have to put like 5 terps on and 5 cannabinoids on the prescription extra, which is a doctor doesn't write. They don't like to write a lot. I know that when it comes to prescriptions. So if you teach a doctor, if you train doctors how to, it would be possible.
Yes, and of course it must be tested. So it must be part of the specification. So the effort you have to release these products for the market, and this must be done by a qualified person in Germany, is more. So you need more analytical effort to test for this, and you also need batch-to-batch consistency, because you have to label exactly what is in it, and this must be batch-to-batch consistent.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. So, so having cannabis as a biological product that has its own batch-to-batch variability, keeping it consistent becomes difficult from a growing aspect. So oils would offer themselves better to make a consistent product, but even if you extract cannabis, you get batch-to-batch variability. So you can do multivariant, multifactorial optimizations. But I fear that the cannabis industry is in its infancy to learn all the cool tricks that other areas or other industries have already figured out. So making an extract that is more than just THC and CBD and prescribable is difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. And you not only have to educate the consumer and the doctor, but also the producers. And so, like, everyone has to learn.
what role does cannabinoid and terp content or labeling play on the Canadian market, on the medical market, and on the recreational market?
So in Canada, the qualitative compounds, cannabinoids, terpenes, they can be tested and labeled by the producer. Only the compounds of concern, pesticides, heavy metals, they have to be tested by a third-party laboratory. So as long as the producer is kind of right with the answer, they're fine. So you see labeling of THC 21 to 26%. They just put that on their package and it will be okay. The flower will be somewhere in there. And the producer also makes themselves easier by just keeping as little information on the package as possible so that they can reuse the packaging. And they're within specs every time. Where you see a lot of new cannabinoids is in the US market, in the hemp space, because cannabis is illegal in the US, but hemp is legal, and hemp is everything except delta-9 THC. So now there is a wild race to make the next intoxicating non-delta-9 THC cannabinoid, and we're testing it on people if they are safe. So there you see loads of labeled cannabinoids.
Okay, but that's a very different approach than our approach here on the
Very much so.
when it comes to medical cannabis. Markus?
Yes, one point is important regarding the statement of Markus, because in Germany we are not free to label a corridor of 12 to 18% or something like that, because we do have legal requirements for herbal medicinal products, and the widest range which is possible is plus minus 10%. So any additional cannabinoid you would like to label, or any additional terpenoid you would like to label, would need to stay in this plus minus 10 corridor. And this is an effort. And this could be only achieved with standardized conditions in cultivation, and for extracts also in extraction.
Yeah, and you actually get into the problem that if you want to label minor cannabinoids and terpenes, they are so low in concentration that your 10% area
Very important point.
is outside of the analytical specs they can achieve. So like the test isn't as precise enough to make it within the 10% anyway.
Okay, so what would you recommend a German wholesaler or a German pharmacy if they want to focus on a special cannabinoid, for example, like Charlotte Swab, you know, that strain that has the special cannabinoid against epilepsy, and you don't need actually so much THC, but this is not mentioned in Germany. So what would you recommend a producer who wants to focus on cannabinoids?
He can do so, but in the end, to sell the product, he needs to have a doctor prescribing it. So in Germany, you have the situation, without a prescription, you will not sell a single product. So you have to convince doctors of your concepts, and you have to stick to the regulations. And this is different to Canada and the US. We do have very detailed regulations for herbal medicinal products, and they apply for magister preparations in total. So a company must be capable to do this standardization, not only for one cannabinoid, but also for others which might be better for a given indication. And this know-how is needed for that. Yeah. You have to mix batches of flowers, you have to mix batches of extracts, you have to know your process very well to be sure to have a batch-to-batch consistent product which reaches the patient in the end.
Ask your chemist.
So despite it's not as easy as, let me say, in other markets, you concentrated or you focused on cannabinoids, and you prepared a little presentation for us, like focused on the cannabinoid issue on the German market, and I'm really proud that you give us this presentation, because your scientific background is really unique, and I was impressed when we met in the green room before the panel. I learned a lot in those 5 minutes, so please, I'm really looking forward to your presentation.
Ja,
Yeah, Thomas is going to give us a little presentation about his company, not about his company,
No, not about my company.
Unveiling
So,
the cannabis platform.
I just tried to summarize some points because the topic today is potential. So we are talking about potential, and I will provide some very brief keynotes from my perspective. And of course, my perspective is medicinal potential. There's other potential, you know that. There's recreational and well-being potential, but this is not my focus. So my focus is in the upper left part of this slide. So we are talking about medicinal potential now. So what is medicinal potential? So potential could be figured out looking for publications. And for cannabis, this is really unique. There is no other area with such numbers of publications, and if you look in the literature, you will find nearly 30,000 publications regarding cannabis, and the potential of cannabis seems to be universal. It seems to be really universal. Every day when I enter my office in the morning, I got messages from new publications, and you will not find a single indication without data from cannabis or cannabinoids. So there must be something with cannabis because it seems to be universal, and this also is applicable to the medicinal potential. So it's not only well-being and recreational, it's also a huge medicinal potential. And this is quite amazing. However, if you look what kind of data is published, you will very rapidly recognize that most of the data published is preliminary data. It's not conclusive. It's a data generating hypothesis. So this is in this slide you will see the normal pathway of drug development. So in drug development you have a discovery phase, you have preclinical testing, you have early clinical evaluation, which is phase 1 and phase 2, and then for getting normally a medicine on the market, you need so-called pivotal studies, which are conclusive, which have a high number of patients, which need to meet certain standards. And if you look for these studies, you will find very, very low numbers. And in the end, we have only 3 approved medicines worldwide with cannabis. So what does it mean? What does it mean? It means, on the one hand, there might be an omnipotent potential, but this potential is not enough. And this is a very important message for you. We will not stay in this situation forever. We will not be able to deliver cannabis to our patients as magister preparations forever. We need approved medicines. This is a normal way, worldwide agreed, how patients will have access to medicine, by approval. And this will not be different for cannabis. So we live in a transition period in the moment, and everybody must be aware of that. And I very often talk to people being not aware of that, thinking that this will last forever. This will not be. And therefore, in the current situation, I would like to summarize, there's a huge medicinal potential. However, this potential is mainly based on preliminary or non-conclusive data. There is little conclusive data in some indications, and the medicinal use is mainly based on no-label or little off-label use. What we are doing in Germany is no-label use, which is normally a very extraordinary pathway to the patient. As soon as you will have approved products, doctors need to prescribe them off-label. They will be no longer allowed to have this off-label, no-label prescriptions. So from my perspective, we need to establish conclusive evidence, and we have to work for that. and we need approved medicines. And this means in the future, this no and off-label use will never ever tolerated for a longer period. It's a transition period. And there are no special provisions for cannabis. Everything is the same. So for approval of medicines, you have to stick to the rules and have to do your homework. And as soon as approved medicines will be available, doctors need to prescribe them off-label. And this no-label use will no longer tolerate it. This is my anticipation. And for developing, and this is now a good bridge to Markus, for developing these medicines which will be approved in future, we will not have THC and CBD. Because with products having THC and CBD, you will have no IP. And nobody will invest a huge amount of money for clinical studies with no IP. So we need complex extracts. We need other cannabinoids to be specified. We need proprietary extraction, which is not public. Otherwise, you will not be able to protect your investment. So simple CBD and THC products, they will not be the future. And this is also a very, very important message you have to take home. And therefore, complex proprietary extracts or mixtures of cannabinoids, or maybe also terpenoids, other ingredients will be the API in this case, because this could be protected. Because a generic is always possible if you label only THC and CBD. And this again is also important to get more acceptance from the mainstream medicine. And if this industry is not following the rules and is not doing its homework, it will not be accepted. This is my anticipation for the future, and cannabis medicines are on the move. Thanks. If you would like to get my slides, please write me with this ICBC app and provide your email, and I will be happy to send it to you.
Thank you very much, Markus. I think there were a few very controversial points in this short presentation, and I promise you we come back to it. We still have a little bit time, but I wanted to ask Markus to the other Markus. I have two Markuses here, so sorry, don't get confused. I wanted to ask Markus to present. Let me call it the Canadian way of dealing with extracts and producing extracts. Please, Markus, Dr. Markus Roggen.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. We have little time, so let me race through this so that you don't have to take too many pictures. The slides are here. Just take the QR code. You can then go back and see all my other presentations as well. Basically, who am I? We're talking about inhalation and we're talking about production. Because actually, I'm just a geek. I'm a German stereotype. I have a PhD in chemistry, and I'm all about process optimization. So LinkedIn is up there. So if you want to say hi, please. Flower is king. Right? We can talk about the medical world and the oils we want to do, and you look at the data in North America, flower is where it's at. It's either flower direct or pre-roll, so the joint already done for you. And everyone cheats with THC because that's the number that everyone cares about, and that dictates the world. Like the minor cannabinoids, they are sexy, they are cool, but THC is where it's at, and everyone cheats. The producer, the testing lab, and the suppliers.
Increasing it or decreasing it?
Increasing. Because you want more bang for your buck. But, and these slides are just there, so for you to have pointers to shout at me, I tell you they're wrong. And then we talk about other stuff. So everyone cheats on THC, and when you actually test it, you see it, everyone inflates. So therefore, it's like, is that actually true? Because if you look at the whole market, yes, higher THC, higher price. But we did the effort and we looked at it on a per state basis, and we did market segmentation and that was just a summer project by one of my students, undergrad students. We could show the relationship disappears. So it's not just THC. We could only show like a market price correlation there of like 20%. So there must be something else that dictates why cannabis consumers come back and keep buying cannabis products. And so chemistry. So it's not just THC, there is an aroma that drives sales. We found that the best-selling products all skew sweeter than the mid-market products. So this is from a paper from Abstract Tech. They're downstairs. They do really cool research, and they find more compounds than just cannabinoids and terpenes. They find thiols, indoles. So cannabis is cool, just look, like there's so much more to discover. And with chemistry, you might get a bit of a business advantage. So when we are talking about cannabis, we test the product and then give it to the patient, and the patient smokes it. And if you put heat and air at anything, you change it. So the compliant testing does us a disservice because we don't actually know what the patient or the recreation consumer actually gets. So I have a robot that smokes joints, and my students are always disappointed to find that out because they apply for the cool job they anticipate. So I look at joints and I want to know how they behave. And I will show you, I do not care about THC. I don't care if a politician says that THC or that cannabis flower is becoming too potent, because I can build you a stronger or a weaker joint just with chemistry. So when you look at a joint, you find out that the first few puffs you take have far less THC than the last puffs of the joint. But every consumer will tell you that they love the beginning of the joint because they actually want the flavor. Terpenes behave the other way around. So if you prescribe a joint or smoking as a medical use, you have a real problem with dosing. And we also, and that's the graph on the right side, the grind size affects how much THC you inhale. You can get more THC per puff with a finer grind, or more THC for the whole joint with a coarser grind. So I can build you a dog walker or a sharing joint just with better architecture. And then what the US market cares about is infusion. You put oil in a joint, you get more THC. Cool, right? No. The blue graphs on the side show you that per puff, there is no difference between a normal flower joint and an infused joint. You just have way more puffs. And if you can get through 160 puffs in one sitting, good on you. But I don't think that's many of us. And then, but what is the difference with an infused joint is you change the flavor. The terpene profile changes because the infused oil brings flavor with it, or aroma. So maybe that's what the consumer is after. But, there's always a but. These are the toxicants. And your oil-infused joint is maybe not the best thing for a patient. So, and then talking about patients and talking about the understanding a cannabis product, like some cannabis products turn purple, and why is that the case? And luckily for you, this is the only slide you have to look at, and if you want to learn more, I'm giving a chemistry lecture on Monday at the Technical University. But short to say, if you put cannabis as a medical product, everyone talks about the antioxidant potential of that medication. If it's antioxidant, it will change, and it does oxidize under light and aerobic conditions in your cannabis products, and it goes haywire. There are compounds that we know are toxic, and then there is a host of things we haven't even fished out of this bathtub of new compounds. So cannabis should have a best before date, and you should maybe look at it what happens after you dispense it, or in that supply chain. Last talk was about flying it or driving across the continent. That might also be a problem. Okay, so just quickly, it doesn't matter if your cannabis is great if you can't make money with it because you won't survive into the next month. And if we look at the public data from cannabis companies, they are pretty bad at producing cannabis at a cost-efficient base. Like if we compare that to CPG or pharma, what they want to be compared at, they were really bad in their profit margins. So that's the geek in me. How do we make this better? It's a modern industry. It's like, I heard, like the first industry of the 21st century. So like, act like it. Like a bucket and alcohol is not your best way of extraction. So we built an AI to continuously optimize the extraction process and not just have your extraction artist make the best product. And also, testing is expensive. But if you take ideas from the COVID crisis, batch testing, pool testing will cut your costs down and ensure that your products go through without failure to the patient. And then in-process analytics, can you cut down the testing costs to like 30 cents a test? So we have a algorithm for that. So there's so much more to discover, and I think this, what is often just a fairy dust of cannabis, could actually be a really cool chemistry product. And with that, I have a few ideas for research projects, so find me afterwards and email me, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Markus. We have another 5 minutes for audience questions. But you see, this is a very different approach. The Canadian approach and the German approach is way different. The German approach is, in my eyes, more scientific, but less fun. Let me say it like this, you know? Because in my eyes, medical cannabis is something you cannot compare to other medicines because the development of its legalization is also a fight of a lot of single people who were criminalized for years, and they fought for their butts. And I remember when I wrote about all those cases in Germany, we had a lot of cases, people being jailed in the early 2000s, and we were all afraid, all the people were afraid that if one day cannabis is going to be legalized, that they cut it apart and put it in a pill. And this is, even if the rest of the pharmaceutical industry works like this, you know, I want to be an exception of the rule. Because I receive medical cannabis from my doctor since 15 years. And so, if our industry puts it into pieces and offers it to patients, and it's a safe medicine, I have no problem with it. But don't force people who don't want it this way, but the old way, to do it the new way. And this is why I said I appreciate the German approach, because it's very scientific, but we also need a little part of the Canadian approach, because in none of those two countries, any patient ever died from cannabis. So,
and my colleagues tried every single day.
And I always said we need the mixture. The Canadian experts and the German experts, they need to do exchange, because in Canada, in my eyes, it's not scientific enough. And this is also why patients are still stigmatized like smokers. And in Germany, it's very, very scientific, and sometimes, in my eyes, they overdo it and they just oversee the history, the development of medical cannabis worldwide. You can't steal the butts from the patient. No way. Sorry for that. And now we're open for questions.
All right. Check. Let's hear it for the panel one time. We have maybe 1 minute, and I'm going to be a little selfish. You had mentioned that you had an AI to do rosin and resin and things like that. Isn't that what you said, to make the concentrates and things, that you were developing an AI? And it seems weird because I wouldn't want a computer making my beer.
So it's a self-enforcement Bayesian algorithm based on random forest optimization.
Yeah, was that English or German?
Neither. So no, the idea is that if you do an extraction or you make a rosin, you then judge it and think it's better or worse, and then you change a parameter and then you do it again. But you can do that with 3-4 parameters. With a computer, you can do that with thousands, and you can do that with thousands of runs, and you can learn from other people. So if you throw everything together, it's basically just you thinking about the problem for years compressed into seconds. So it's not taking you out of the loop, it's just speeding up your thought process.
Is it? Yes.
So it's
Do you
not
trust computers to think for you? I mean, this is maybe beyond cannabis because we're getting into an age of where computers are going to try to do every little freaking thing for us. They're taking jobs from writers and all this other stuff and artists, and people want to write scripts with the computer. So it's way beyond just cannabis. But I think, like to Michael's point, maybe we're just old dreadlocked hippies, but there's still magic in the plant, and it can't always just be science. And these are the challenges that we're having.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then we're agreed. Let's hear it for the panel. It's fantastic. Thank you so very much. Fantastic.